Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a subject that's near and dear to me and something that I don't think gets talked about enough. And that's the importance of having a hobby. Many people today have pastimes, but what we really need is a hobby. Okay, so what's the difference between a pastime and a hobby? There's a lot of overlap in terms of the definitions, and people often use these words interchangeably. But I like to think of a pastime as something that simply passes one's time. The only requirement is that it passes your time, it's a distraction, and it's a brief escape from our daily life. A hobby to me is something more involved. It's something that one studies, practices, and participates in regularly. A hobby offers some level of challenge, growth, spiritual satisfaction, and self-improvement. That said, what is considered a pastime for one person could be a hobby for another. It just depends on the extent and degree of your engagement and how serious you take it. For example, I enjoy fishing, but not to the extent of my friends who are constantly reading up on new equipment, learning all sorts of complicated fishing knots, watching endless YouTube videos, and looking for new places to fish. I have a friend that his entire garage honestly looks like a tackle store. Me, on the other hand, I only have what I need. For me, fishing is just a great excuse to be outside by the water hanging out with my friends. If I catch something, that's great. If not, that's fine too. I know people who go out golfing just to get out of the house and spend time with their buddies. And I know others who practice, train, and continually strive to improve their game. I've even met people who travel the world with the express purpose of playing golf. I met a guy once that wrote a book on the different types of grass and how it affects the game. I had no idea that grass was so diverse or had such an effect, but apparently it does. I have a number of pastimes and hobbies that keep me occupied. So many that I actually once, as a joke, printed up social calling cards that had the job title recreational specialist. But my favorite hobby's always been aquariums. I've been interested in aquariums as far back as I can remember. I've kept everything from freshwater fish to exotic corals and even cephalopods. I study all aspects of the hobby, from water chemistry to lighting and supplements. I try to learn everything I can about keeping these animals. When I have downtime or need to decompress for some stress, I tend to my aquariums. When I travel, I like to see public aquariums as well as the local fish stores. Hobbies allow one to have their own space, to engross themselves in their interests, and interact with people who share similar passions. Whether you're joining a team, a club, or an interest group, or you're using the internet to find people who share your passion, hobbies can take many forms and they can take us down many roads. I'm not much of an internet person or social media person, but I am amazed at the level of knowledge and insight that some of these online group members possess. And it's a lot of fun for me to correspond with people who share my excitement for reef keeping and cuttlefish. Hobbies keep us active and engaged. They stimulate our mind as well as our spirit. It's an outlet to be creative and expressive. It's a time to just be ourselves. It's a time to just be in our own world. Sometimes people might actually be able to make some money with their hobby, whether it turns into a business, a job, or just a side hustle. I used to grow and propagate corals and anemones and sell them to local fish stores as well as people on Craigslist. Just like a gardener, sometimes a reef keeper has to do some trimming and culling so it doesn't get overgrown and suffocate itself. Instead of throwing out these cuttings, I would grow them out and sell them. Reef keeping can be a fairly expensive hobby, so for me to be able to cover the cost of my aquariums while having fun doing it, that's a win-win in my book. Whether you consider hobbies to be a way of passing time or a means to get out and be social, or if your hobby runs deeper to the point of being a passion, I think it's important to have these interests, to explore them and have this time for yourself. As the old saying goes, idle hands are the devil's workshop. I think a lot of people would feel better about themselves and their life if they spent some time exploring, finding their passions, and feeding those interests. So make sure that you take time for yourself. If you have a hobby, make sure that you budget time each week to pursue it. And if you don't have one, I would encourage you to explore yourself to find those interests, because not only is it a great way to pass the time, but it's also a wonderful way to lift the spirits. As always, if you've gotten something out of this, please hit like and subscribe. And as always, new content drops every Wednesday, 3 p.m. And until next time, thank you for joining me.